morning. Welcome to our 58th Coffee with the Commissioner event. It's 6:30 a.m. It's Wednesday morning and we're here and we appreciate you being here. And we've got some great guests this morning and we're going to talk about a lot of important issues that are very important to all the citizens of Escambia County. First and foremost, I want to welcome our very, very special guest, Dr. Deanna Oleski. She is the first Judicial Circuit Chief Medical Examiner. That's a four county area, a gigantic area, and she's responsible for, her office is responsible for doing all the autopsies for folks who pass away in the entire area. I had the pleasure of touring her facility about 2 weeks ago. She was very gracious and showed me all the challenges she and her staff face. So I thought it'd be a great idea to bring her onto the coffee and discuss these issues, because it's not an issue that, you know, day in and day out folks really think about until the unfortunate occurrence happens that you have a loved one who passes away. So we're very, very thankful, Dr. Oleski, that you're here this morning. Thank you for getting up early and being here. And we look forward to a great conversation. And then as always, we have our staff members. We've got our county administrator, Janice Gilly. Good morning, Janice. And then we have our emergency manager, public safety director, Eric Gilmore. He's here. We're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19, the vaccination program, and where we're at. So just lots to talk about, lots to get to. Before we get started, I just want to thank the Nature Trail Homeowners Association. They had me out and allowed me to speak before their group yesterday afternoon. I greatly appreciated the opportunity to talk about a lot of issues out in Beulah and District 1 in particular, the OLF 8 project. And there's been a lot of misinformation put out. There's been a lot of disinformation. And I greatly appreciated the opportunity to kind of set a lot of those facts straight. So thanks for that. And I look forward to tomorrow's meeting at 9 o'clock of the Board of County Commissioners. We're going to do a committee of the whole, and the entire focus of that workshop will be OLF 8 and the way forward there. So that's going to be a great meeting, and I look forward to that. Janice, typically the way we do this, obviously, Janice, we turn the floor over to her. She's got a big job and lots going on. So Janice, would you like to give us a county update and tell us what's happening?
Yeah, so I'll just mention a couple of things. I'm going to leave COVID and vaccines to Eric. He's very capable and he obviously will have the most up-to-date information. But I want to just mention a couple of things. So as you know, this month is Black History Month. Last meeting, we were able to honor Reverend John Powell, and we did play a video to, just kind of talk about his contributions to our community from a civil rights perspective. And then at the next board meeting next week, we're going to recognize H.K. Matthews, who's another civil rights leader. And, in the video, he mentioned that he had been arrested 35 times and had been, just incarcerated numerous times because of his beliefs and his action related to civil rights. And so I just think that's a story that a lot of people need to be aware of. He's 95 years old. And so he will be at our morning meeting. Our evening meeting was just a little bit late for him. So we're so looking forward to being able to celebrate him and his contributions to our community next week. Some of the other things that we have going on right now, we're asking for the public's input on the Hollis T. Williams skate park design. So if you have an interest in that and we have a lot of skateboarders that we have to run out of our parking garage every afternoon. So I look forward to them participating in the design and their parents participating in the design, and us get a design that fits the needs of our community. And I think it's going to be a key feature for the community for the future. It's a partnership between us and the city, and it'll be used, it's being used with Restore dollars to fund that project. The other thing that we're, this week will be President's Day on Monday. So there will be offices closed at the county. So we'll provide that closure listing for folks to let them know. It's one of our holidays each year. This past week, we did refresh our homepage. So it's a new skin, a new look. We weren't able to refresh all of our pages because it's, a bit of an arduous process, but we thought getting the homepage refreshed would be helpful. So if you previously knew where something was on the homepage and you don't see it now, don't hesitate to contact our offices and we'll make sure we help you find. We're kind of going back, we're going to the hamburger menu, which is very common now on most websites. So we have that going on. And that's one of those things that these days with websites, if you don't refresh them every 2 or 3 years, people get, they get tired of looking at what you have. So we're hoping that the refresh will, just kind of give a new look to for our community. As you mentioned, we do have the OLF 8 meeting tomorrow. I expect there to be a considerable amount of robust conversation. But what I do hope is that, as you've mentioned on numerous occasions, that the board will, be able to give and take in terms of how they want to see that land utilized in the future, so that we can move forward with the land use planning for that
Yes.
property. And then we can pursue, like you've mentioned, Triumph funding and other types of funding to be able to get that project going for our community. And I think those are the main things. If I think of something else, I'll mention it. But, as we always talk about here, we have a lot of jobs that are available for folks in the
Yes.
community. We have jobs from equipment operators to animal techs at our kennel and our animal services. We also have accounting tech positions. So we have everything from manual or skilled labor all the way to administrative and office labor. And so, anyone that's looking for a job, and if you have skills and you think you're underutilized, please look on our website, and we'd love to have you join our team.
No, that's a great update, and what a great point that you make, because not only are these jobs good jobs, they come with a tremendous benefits package. The Blue Cross insurance, the health insurance that's offered here, the Delta Dental, and most important, the FRS pension plan. There are very few employers that are offering pensions. They've almost all gone away, except for the big names that you'd know, UPS and some other. But for the most private companies are only strictly 401k investment plans. So yeah, obviously great jobs out there. Corrections officers, very, very, but rewarding jobs. I believe we have 30 or 40 openings, something along those lines. We always have 5 to 8 firefighter openings. And I do appreciate you, Janice, sending me the weekly list of public safety employee openings, with EMT positions, paramedic positions for sure. So if you have those skills and you want to work for a great organization with tremendous benefits, please come apply. And on the website refresh, just as an aside, Janice, I noticed I couldn't find the commissioner's homepage. It was very difficult to find. So maybe that's a good thing.
Sorry.
No. Debbie's not complaining. Believe me.
I did something. You were talking about the benefits. So there is a bill in the legislature to limit new entries into the FRS plan till July of 2022. So if you get in with us this year, you have a chance to vest in the FRS. So otherwise you may have to do a 401k like you mentioned, companies and other corporations have. So
and what an interesting point that you make. I mean, it's my understanding that the Florida retirement system is actuarially sound. I mean, they balance it every year, and they charge us a lot of money for employees that they're in there. But the fact that they're looking at getting away, doing away with that, I certainly there's going to be a lot of pushback to that, particularly among the public sector unions, the police, the teachers. But it might still happen. So that's something to keep in mind. What a great additional point to get people out to apply. Get in that pension plan. I mean, it's a great.
I did think of one more thing I do want to mention.
Please.
ECAT, if you're riding our public transportation, it is a federal requirement by TSA and Department of Homeland Security to wear your mask. And it's so much so that we have now been instructed, and there will be an announcement that goes out today that clearly defines this. We have been instructed not to move the bus, not to move our transportation. If you refuse to wear a mask, we've already contacted the city chief. The mayor is working with us on that, and we're contacting the sheriff. We've already contacted the sheriff's office. We are required to have you wear a mask if you get on our transportation. So while we've been requiring them since January, we've not necessarily had a lot of issues, but we are now required by the federal government that we have to report and enforce. So
that's good. That's good. I mean, do it out of respect for your fellow citizen. Do it out of respect for the bus driver. Do it because it's now a federal mandate. You don't want us calling the police on you. And that's so we're not rolling the bus unless everyone's got the mask on. Is that what we're hearing?
Correct. We're required by TSA and Homeland Security to take that action.
Outstanding. Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for bringing that up. All right, Eric. It looks like our COVID, like we were talking a little bit before we started, it looks like our COVID numbers are really trending in the right direction in terms of the number of tests we've given, 164,700, according to the dashboard this morning. And by the way, for people who don't know, if you go to myescambia.com, we have a very comprehensive dashboard. We track all these metrics, tests, the number of positive cases, the number of deaths, the number of currently hospitalized, which is trending downward very nicely, the positivity rate, vaccinated, and an important metric that we began tracking about a month ago, the recovered number. I mean, when you look at a big number of cases, there are those who recover. And obviously recovery can mean different things. It doesn't mean you might have come out of the disease unscathed, but it means you survived. It means you didn't die. And so there's a large number of folks who have had this disease locally, the vast majority of whom have recovered completely. Some are the long haulers that you hear about, but we're tracking that. The state doesn't track it, and I don't know why, but we're doing it here locally. And I appreciate Eric and staff putting that together, and Chips Kirschenfeld and the others who did that. So that's an important metric. But in terms of the total positive cases, 32,208 that we know of, and the experts say there's probably double or triple that may have had it and not known about it, or have it and have no symptoms. We've had right now 159 folks currently in our 3 hospitals. That number got almost to 300. It got up to 291. So we're back down to about half of that. So that's great news. That's really fantastic. Positivity down to 11.1, which isn't exactly where we want it, below 10, but it's better than the 19 that it was for a while. And then of course our vaccinations, and I don't want to steal Eric's thunder, but we've had 31,988 citizens vaccinated. That's really impressive given the challenges we have with supply. So Eric, tell us all about the vaccination and what's happening with that.
So it's actually going very well with the limited number of doses that we have in the county. I'm proud to say we haven't had the long car lines and people running out of fuel and logistical issues such as that. We've tried to come up with a methodical way of getting it out there in a fast, efficient way. And the people who have come to our pods and our community partners pods, they've all had high anxiety getting there. And once they went through the process, we've had people come out and say, this was nothing that like it was portrayed on the news, nothing like we saw in South Florida, nothing like we've seen anywhere else. They tell us that they were actually anxious and nervous going there. And then once they got done with the process, they was like, that was nothing. This past Sunday, the Sunday before, we had our second dose pod at Brownsville, and we had people, this is their second time coming, so they knew what to expect. They come right through the door in a orderly fashion. They come at their appointment time. They didn't slam us at the door when we opened the doors like it was, after Thanksgiving sale, because we did have that a couple of times. They just slam us at the door. And as they were sitting there in their 15-minute wait time, we had these people, taking selfies of their vaccine, them with their vaccine card with their second dose. It was awesome. So we are getting it out there despite the limited availability. We do have a plan and the infrastructure in place that once the doses become more prominent in the community, we have a plan to upscale that and get it out more predominantly. So we've had a lot of people say, why don't you do it this way? Or why don't you do it that way? I'll be happy to do it any way that gets it out faster, as long as I have it. That's right. My key issue. So I need people to understand that. And I don't think that they truly understand. We are only getting 2,500 doses a week. Wow. And that is to the Department of Health. The Department of Health then goes to our community partners, which we have fantastic community partners. Ascension Sacred Heart, Baptist Hospitals helped out, West Florida's hospitals helped out, and Community Health in Northwest Florida. And they've helped disseminate those 2,500 doses out every week. We burn all 2,500 doses every week.
Well, that's fantastic. Speaking of Community Health Northwest, I was contacted by them about something coming up here potentially in District 1. Can you tell me if that's a go? Or I'd like to make the announcement, but I won't unless it's a go.
So we're still working with them on that. Logistically, we're trying to find them a location that meets their need. It will be a go. We just don't know where yet. And we're working with Tom and Sandra Smiley and those guys, and they are going to do something on the west side out toward your area. So yes, it will be a go. I can tell you that. We just don't have everything just nailed down just yet. So
gotcha. And that date is still good. I'm not going to mention it, but that date.
I believe so, but it depends on the venue and if we can get the venue that day. But we are working. Let's just say we're working for next week. Can we say that?
I like that.
We're working for next week. So something on the west side next week, and we'll try to shore those things up. So,
and let me ask you a couple of questions about the vaccination. We're getting the Moderna.
Yes.
Okay. And folks, when they get the first shot, I'm hearing from a lot of different folks that obviously they have the pain in the arm, but there's a number of younger people who get the second shot, and about 12 hours after, bang, they get like the flu for 24 hours. Older folks, above 65, anecdotally, it doesn't seem like that's happening Have you heard that, or is there any explanation for that?
There's no, so to be honest with you, when I received my second dose, the next day, the next afternoon, I got a splitting headache. And then toward the afternoon, I started getting body aches. I never ran a fever. I never got the chills. I just had body aches and a headache. But the next day I was in the board meeting all day. So I thought it was the board meeting that was getting me.
That's what it was.
So anyway, but I did have a little bit of not a reaction, but just I've had anywhere from people getting their second dose having nothing whatsoever. They're perfectly fine, to just a sore arm, a little sore than the first vaccine, first shot, to chills, body aches, fevers. And it's been the entire gamut from young to old, and it affects everybody a little different. So, but I will tell you that interestingly enough, we did test one of our staff here before he received the vaccine. We tested him for the antibodies with a little cassette, and he had no antibodies. So he received his first dose, and then we tested him. He had no antibodies. He received his second dose, and then 7 days after his second dose, we tested him, and he had antibodies.
Wow.
So
okay.
We actually had some of my staff get tested after the 7 days after their second dose, and they had antibodies. So apparently it is working. So yes.
Well, that's fantastic. That's great news. Hey, we got a question from online. It actually was emailed into Debbie, and we want to talk about how case counts are developed. How are cases counted? If a person gets tested, is that a case? If the same person is tested and the result is negative, is that a case? If the same person is tested and positive, is that a case? If a person is tested and the test result is positive, 2 weeks later is tested again as a negative, how many cases are there? And that's a good question, because I think people are confused about that. Can you tell us how that works, Eric?
I can give you my best stab at it, but I've been told by DOH that once you're a positive, you're a positive. So it doesn't count. And then when you're a negative, you're negative. So it doesn't cumulatively keep rolling, supposedly, is what I've been told. But then again, I'm not in the Marlins system, so I can't very well. So myself, when I went to Tallahassee to help out, Tallahassee State EOC required us to get tested initially to get in. So I had to get my test to get in. So I tested negative. So that's one test. Then every Tuesday, they test all the staff in the EOC. It's a rapid test. So I had to test Tuesday as well. So I got my swab Tuesday. I was a negative test. And then Thursday, they tested the staff again. So I got 3 tests while I was in Tallahassee. And supposedly I wasn't supposed to be negative, 3 negative results for Escambia County. It should have been my 1 negative result is what I was told. So
yeah, that's the question. And Dr. Oleski, I don't know if you might have anything to add to this, but if a person gets tested 5 times, first time positive and then 4 times negative, is that counted as 1 case, 1 person, or 5 cases for each test?
Honestly, that's probably a better question for the Department of Health than for me. I don't know how they're keeping track of it either.
Interesting. Well, maybe next time Marie Mott comes, we'll ask her that, and we'll see if she can give us an answer. Anyway, I appreciate you all taking a stab at that, because I know myself, I've wondered about that. You know, if I test positive and then I'm trying to get back to work and I got to take another test and another test till I test negative, does that count as 3 in the cumulative stats that you see on the dashboards everywhere, or is that 1? Be a good thing to know. All right. Well, what else you got for us, Eric, before we move on to our medical examiner?
So real quick, everybody's seeing on the news that the federal government is rolling out a plan to distribute the vaccine as well to our Sam's Club, to our Walmarts, and to our Winn-Dixies right now. And we did get confirmation that starting tomorrow, our 6 Walmarts, and I don't remember which stores are, I think they're the superstores, our 6 Walmarts will be receiving the federal doses, and our 2 Winn-Dixies in the Escambia County. So we'll have 8 additional venues for people to get the vaccine out. Now, understand, it's still limited dosage. It's not, I know we're getting it out there where there's many ways to get the vaccine, but the vaccine is still limited at those sites, like Publix. Sure. We have it at Publix, but there's only 200 doses. I suspect that Walmart and Winn-Dixie will have the same thing. It'll be limited doses, but we have multiple venues of getting it. So it looks like, from me looking outside, not knowing anything, I would look at that and go, well, the vaccine seems to be everywhere. Well, it's getting in the places everywhere, and they're getting ready for that retail piece, that when the thing ramps up, that we have the retail piece that they can just slam it to them.
Right.
And we can start getting like flu shots at these places. So people just need to understand that and be patient until the vaccine ramps up. It's going to be hit and miss in trying to get your vaccine right now. So.
And I
right.
think just
Janice?
to be clear too, yeah, make sure that you make an appointment. Don't make the
Yes.
rush like Eric was.
Don't go to Winn-Dixie and say, I
Yeah,
want my shot.
yeah, like Thursday, like he said, Friday after Thanksgiving. Because number one, that protects the public from actually making sure that we can continue to provide those vaccines. Because if we have a bad incident, then they may not allow those places to continue to do them. So that's why we definitely want to make sure that we keep it a managed process so that we
Right.
can continue to show that we know how to do this in our community. So which means we deserve to get more vaccine. I think that's
Yep.
one of the things that we've demonstrated from the beginning is the way we've managed it has, I know that people have been a little frustrated about the state changing, this website, this phone number, whatever. But on the other hand, that has helped us manage the distribution in a way that we've not had the panic and chaos. So
Yes.
as we get more of these retail outlets that have them, please make sure you abide by their rules to be able to, get online. I do know that people are desperate. We hear about people every day that have vulnerable situations, or maybe they're just 63 or 64 and they're in an essential workforce situation and they need the vaccine. And trust me, we feel very we're very concerned about those situations and those people, but our hands are tied. But I think the more that we can show that we can manage this properly, I think maybe some of that will loosen up hopefully quicker. I mean, we're only in February, first week of February, and we've already done a considerable amount of vaccinations in our community.
Yes.
And so we're hoping to continue to get as many by March and April of folks that, like I said, are in the vulnerable category or in the emergency essential worker category that will help, like continue to protect our community.
No, I appreciate that answer. And it's been a question, as we know, at the last meeting, I asked Marie Mott a question that I thought was pretty straightforward. I didn't really get a very good answer. And that was, once we get all the people that are medically vulnerable, once we get all the first responders and those over 65, what's the next category going to be? Is it going to be 60 to 65? Is it going to be 55 to 65? Is it going to applies to everyone? She didn't have an answer. And I would think somewhere they would have that already delineated. Okay, and also, what is the saturation point? There are people that don't want the shot. It was astonishing to me that half of one of our local hospitals staff said, no, we don't want it. Astonishing to me. I don't know. And that kind of, anyway, whatever that means, but 50% of the people in a hospital don't want the shot. Leaves me a little uneasy. But so what's the saturation point? Knowing that there are people that don't want to take it. So once 50%, when do we move to the next level? Does anyone know, Janice?
I'm gonna let Eric answer that.
So, Debbie, so we've been asking those same things to the state. So we're trying to, because here's the thing, I want to plan for the next level. I don't want them to tell me, but it seems like everything's been done at press conferences. So we'll be on the state call with DEM and they'll say, hey guys, we got a big announcement today, but we can't get ahead of the governor. So we all had to sit there and watch the press conference to get our next bit of information. This is how it has been, I assure you. Wow. So it's frustrating for us because I want to have that next level plan. How am I going to reach that demographic, or how am I going to get this out there? Believe me, we are pushing to find out. Let me know so I can have a plan or get a plan formulated on how we're going to get them. So we're working on that, and we beat them up every day to try to find that out. So
appreciate that.
We don't know yet exactly what it is, but I assure you we are working hard because I don't like being blindsided. I like to know what the game plan is. I want to be able to execute a plan safely and confidently in the community, and everybody goes, okay, well, at least Escambia County knows what's going on, and they have the process going. So, but we don't know. Now, the saturation level is a very good question. I feel like with our demographic, we're right there around it. To be honest with you. But I think it's the rest of the state that we're waiting on to get there. And when the rest of it, because the governor's not going to say, okay, Panhandle, you can go to this, and South Florida, you can go to this. He's going to keep the whole state going the same way at one time. So unfortunately, because we'll be there, I feel, or we have been there somewhere hovering around that demographic and that saturation level, that we're going to have to wait for the rest of the state to catch up.
Well, that's a shame. We shouldn't be penalized for being effective at getting our vaccine out to our 65 and older. But yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, Eric. That's probably the way they're going to do it. Okay, ready, set, now the whole state can go. And meanwhile, we got 50-year-olds like banging on our door,
exactly,
with conditions or high blood pressure. Well, yeah, and I guess I appreciate you asking for those answers, because I think that's something that would really be citizens would really like to know that. And that would be helpful.
I'd like to
Well, as
know.
I'd like to know. That way I can answer questions that people are asking me at Walmart. I'm like, I don't know. But this will be a good segue as we, and Dr. Oleski, thank you for your patience. We always got to do a little county business and then we get to the yes, but this is a good question from the internet right now. And it's for all of us. And it says, our morgue facility needs space now. We've heard about building a regional facility in Santa Rosa County, but that could take years. Couldn't we find a building like the old Bells in Milton and get the doctor some space this year, like repurpose a building? So Janice, you want to take a stab at that? What do you think?
Yeah, so actually, Dr. Oleski, that is one of the that I've mentioned to her, but I also mentioned it to our DOMES committee. And I'll just, this is going to sound a bit crass, but I think it's hopefully sounds a little bit reasonable. When you have an old grocery store or some facility that already has some form of refrigeration. Not be the
Right.
exact kind of refrigeration, but some type of refrigeration already built into it. I thought that would be an easier retrofit. At the time that we were looking, and this goes several months ago before Dr. Oleski was here with us, we couldn't identify any of those facilities. A lot of those facilities have already been taken over with other retail establishments. Back 10 years ago, you could go around any corner and find an old Winn-Dixie or
Right.
maybe an old Walmart or something like that might have had, or a Del Champs that might have
Yep.
had refrigeration. We kind of don't have that right now. So she and I have actually discussed that, because I personally would like her to have a facility sooner rather than later. And I think, as the person mentioned, yes, it does take a couple of years by the time you do design. Absolutely. I think we already have some property that's been offered up by Santa Rosa, and she can certainly speak to that. It does take a while for design and funding and things like that.
Very
So-
good. Well, Dr. Oleski, thank you so much for your patience. Welcome aboard. Thanks for being
Thank you.
here. I got a couple of questions for you. I've written them out. So we'll start out by tell us about yourself and your background. And first, welcome to the Panhandle. Thanks for taking the job. Tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I kind of fell in love with this area. It reminds me a lot of home in a way, and home is the Midwest. I'm a Midwesterner. I'm from Chicago originally.
Okay.
This is one of the few places in Florida that not only has a beach, but also has seasons. So the fact that
Yeah.
it's gray right now, I kind of like it. It's been cold. I really kind of like it. So it reminds me of home. So I really like it here. People are very kind and accepting different backgrounds. I also like the fact that there's so much military presence here. My husband is Purple Heart veteran, and there's so many bases and options for him to work at as a civilian now.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, where have you been here? How long have you been here now in Pensacola?
I moved here in July.
Okay. All right. Good. And you started working almost immediately thereafter?
I took some time off between my job at District 23 in St. Augustine and here. I was doing just locums for a while because I was feeling a little bit burnt out. And that gave me and my husband the opportunity to just honestly kind of drive, and being on the road was nice. And be able to serve other communities that were getting hit really hard, because we got hit probably the hardest in July and August in terms of almost like it felt like an avalanche of cases. But yeah, no, I've been here since July, and I started in my position as a district medical examiner in November.
Wow.
And you have a hobby. Tell them your hobby.
Oh yeah. What's your hobby?
I have expensive hobbies, unfortunately. They just got more expensive. I'm a competitive shooter, so I participate in IDPA and USPSA. I'm a really good distance shot. I'm slow. Don't get me wrong, I'm slow, but I'm a really good distance shot. And I actually ended up, don't tell my husband I said this, I actually ended up becoming a little bit better than him. So now he's my coach for regional events. But unfortunately, bullets are so expensive. I just looked and saw how much a pack of 50 of 9mm. It's usually would say, oh, I dropped a quarter when you dropped a bullet. And now I dropped $2.50. So $2.50. So
wow.
yeah.
And you know what? It's only going to get more expensive too. I mean, it's only going to go up. All right. Well, I digress. Well, that's an interesting hobby. So what's your farthest shot where you've hit the bullseye? I guess, is that how you would measure that?
So when we're doing competitive matches, it's also like a timed event, and it's the accuracy kind of thing. So I tend to go for headshots because then I know I hit the target. to be quite honest.
Yeah. Well,
See,
yeah.
I can pick somebody off with a handgun at 60+ yards, and the older guy next to me can't. So.
Wow. Well, that's good to know. You're like a double threat. That's awesome. Well, okay. You know, when I went out and toured your facility, you know, I got to say it was an eye-opening situation for me. I mean, you know, just all the different things that you guys do, and then all the different storage things that you stored, without getting too, you know, into the details. So the challenge that you face is you've got 2 additional medical examiners and I got to meet both of them. Very, very happy. But your big challenge now is, would you say it's facility or personnel?
Well,
It's both.
it's definitely both. So I do have some good news, and that is that Senator Broxton brought forth to the Appropriations Committee some funding, state funding, for design of a potential building. So we asked for $500,000. We've got some lobbyists working with us and for us, and making some phone calls, and hopefully it'll get approved, so that we can at least have that initial part funded by the state, so we can go forward with the design. As somebody had mentioned online, it's going to take a while. In regards to having a retrofitted other building, we are going to visit Denver's medical examiner's office, which is interesting and stunning to say that we serve a bigger population than Denver does in District 1. And we have about the same amount of cases. So we're within 5%. It's actually, I would say it's our sister office.
And how big is their office? You brought this up when we were on the tour.
Oh yeah. So our facility total, including office space, including hallways and janitor's closets, is 4,000 square feet. Denver's facility is 26,000 square feet. Our entire office fits into their records room.
Wow. Well, here's kind of an off the wall question for you, coming from the internet. Does the medical examiner or the department harvest any parts, tissues, et cetera, off the dead people?
Harvest. I'm not sure what
does that
quite
mean?
Means.
I know that you have to save samples, right? Like you showed one area.
Yeah,
Nothing for like reuse. You don't take anything for reuse, right?
I don't know what you would reuse them for, but no.
Me neither.
We try to keep our sampling to be very limited and respectful. We try to put everything that came with them back with them, honestly. But it's against the law for us to do any sort of research or for us to sell anything. We work with tissue agencies and organ donation agencies who procure tissues and organs, and we work with those people. But I personally, no harvesting.
This is a question I've always had ever since I watched Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and they have cadavers for students. And so where do the cadavers for students come from? I mean, do you have to sign up before you die? Is that something you say, okay, I'll be a science, but when you see a cadaver being used to treat students, is that something that's already gone through your process, or does it bypass your process?
That's a very interesting question. And I know that body donation is very, very important, especially for medical students across the country. There's very limited persons who are willing to donate themselves to, quote, science, to be studied. Yeah. And I'm telling you, we honor these people. We really do. They are an amazing resource. I'm getting a little teary-eyed because I can't thank them enough. But yeah, no, it's a thing that you would do ahead of time. My mom wants to be donated to a place like UF, and that's what I will respect her. After the medical students dissect and they're done, we have a ceremony at the end of the year, and the cremains are returned to the family.
So on your driver's license, it says, I'll be an organ donor. Would you do something with it? I mean, how would you, if a person wanted to donate their body that way, how would someone do that?
I would probably just do a Google search. If it's on your driver's license, it's not really going to be valid. It's more something to let your next of kin know that this is, please let me do this. I'd like to be respected in this way.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, I that was kind of an off the wall question, but it was something I had thought about, and it was one of the things I talked about. Obviously, before you came aboard, we did have some previous issues with the previous medical examiner, and Okaloosa County had some challenges because of the distance, and and they had an office over there. That office is closed. So when we were on our tour, you had told me that you have about 19 staff members total, and the majority of them work here in Escambia County. But one of the issues that we had with the previous medical examiner was we needed records, because obviously Escambia County, along with our other counties, we fund your operation, right? So we had some questions. We requested some documents. We didn't get it, and then of course, unfortunately, some litigation ensued. But with you as our medical examiner, are you committed to giving us the records that we need when we request them, because they're public records?
Sunshine laws are very important. I love the sunshine laws in Florida. Part of the reason why I chose to work in the state. In regards to how is my position different than the previous administrations, is that we are not a private office. I am a civil servant just like y'all. It is a government office now, and we have it's a government entity, I guess, where we have 4 members on our board. It's called DOMES, District 1 Medical Examiners Support. Janice is one of the DOME board members. And it's kind of like it's kind of like an oversight, just for budget and finances of what's coming in, what's coming out. And I think that this is a good way to do it. I disagree with many other medical examiners across the state and having private offices. If you want to make money off the dead, you are in the wrong field.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, just to be clear, we put, and actually Dr. Oleski, as part of her agreement with us, very clearly articulated that she would have an open records, open books, open accounts. And so that chart of accounts is, we're continuing to create that with her in the office, but she absolutely has been 110% transparent in all conversations. And like she said, in providing those books to us. So she's not even intimated that she would not provide us any ounce of information, so much so that it's even in writing in our agreement and our contract with her.
No, I appreciate that. And again, not to really look over my shoulder at the past, but it was frustrating because, once we went through all the documents and records, we realized that the previous individual was making, in excess of close to $1 million a year. And I get it. You're a doctor, you went, you have the training, you have the spec, but that's a public wage, and that's a tremendously high public wage. And obviously, you and I spoke, and this is an incredible statistic, and I had a hard time believing it, but let's talk about that. How many forensic pathologists are in the country right now?
There you go.
And it was an amazing stat.
So in the country right now that are practicing, okay, we
Yes,
have a lot of people who, it's a very physically demanding career. You need to be strong in order to do it. You need to be able to stand up, and you need to have really great eyesight. So those who are currently alive don't necessarily count, although they would like to continue to work. There's roughly 500 of us in the entire country. And every year, so it takes 13 years to make a forensic pathologist, 13 years of school after high school. So I went to undergraduate, I got a bachelor's degree. After that, I went to medical school. After that, I went to residency. After that, I did fellowship. So that's 13 years of commitment. Probably, when people are having babies and families and buying houses, I was in school.
Wow.
So there's only about 500 of us, and we're only making about 30 a year. We need, realistically, in this country, about 1,500. So the fact that District 1 now has 3 very qualified individuals is rare, and I'm lucky to have these people on my staff. Genuinely lucky.
It's Dr. Gallagher, and is it Dr. Murphy?
Yes, Dr. Gallagher was the previous intern, and we just hired Dr. Murphy, who started with us at the end of January. I recruited her from Galveston, from Houston. We actually went to fellowship together.
Now, this is going to be an interesting question, and I'm not trying to get into political philosophy or anything like that, but what you just said about 13 years after you get out of high school to do what you do, could that be streamlined, or is there some artificial constriction of the pipeline for some crazy reason? And I say that because there's a lot of people that feel that to become a doctor in our country is too difficult. Other countries, they do a more streamlined approach. If you want to do, be a surgeon, you do this way. And is it something that just keeps the educational establishment flush with money? Putting you on.
It's a little hard. My mom used to be a dean of a nursing school, so I'm like, Do I think we can streamline this? Heck yes. But are we going to? Probably not. They made a lot of
No.
money off of me.
Well, yeah, exactly. And there you go. So folks have to take on $200,000, $300,000, $400,000.
I have $400,000 in student loan debt.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing.
That is a
Never
house
asked,
I've
but-
never lived in. I've
my
never lived
Lord.
in that house. Yes. It's
Now I
federal
can't
student loan
imagine,
debt.
since you've been so forthcoming, what's the mortgage payment on a student loan like that? Is that like $3,000 a month? I mean, what is that?
Currently it's zero. I'm
Oh.
so that's the one thing that is it sounds terrible, but that's been the one quote benefit from this pandemic is that they made it zero. But yeah, about $1,800 to $2,500 a month. So I do like, so when I'm not kidding when I say I have paid 2 mortgages a month.
Wow. Well, what an amazing data point. Thank you for sharing that. I probably was rude to ask, but since you told me about the amount, what I worry about as a former school board member is people going to probably really have no business going, but they're told you could do it. And they take 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and they maybe get an associate's degree in general ed, and they're still waiting tables, but that money is never going to be repaid. The $400,000 you took out, you got a skill. Obviously, you're in high demand and you'll make a very high salary and you'll pay back. But the way we're running kids through this grinder of education, and so many of them never finish and they still take the debt on. I think it's 1.4 trillion that is at risk. No one talks about it. It's the next bubble that'll burst. But I don't want to get into education philosophy with you. But what
I could like to add though is, to
Please.
work in our office, you don't have to be a doctor. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. We have autopsy technicians that have bachelor's degrees. Like you said, they don't necessarily need them. We have medical legal death investigators. Also, you don't necessarily need a degree. It's all learn on the job experience. There is no school for this, which is nice, but also means that there's other careers within forensics without having to go and commit yourself to that kind of debt.
Wow, that's what an amazing, interesting conversation this is.
Yeah,
I'm telling you.
I do want to make sure that we emphasize what Dr. Lesky said about the fact that we have her, Dr. Murphy, and Dr. Gallagher.
Right.
I call them the spotted frogs, the rare spotted frog, because they are so in demand, and how fortunate we are to have them, and how fortunate we hopefully are to keep them as our cases increase exponentially. And then, as she mentioned to you, also, would you mention about the DC office? Because I think Washington, DC, just like Denver, is a very high profile community. I think you demonstrating the difference between us and them, or the similarities, I think would be really helpful to Commissioner Burgash's conversation.
Sure, absolutely. So as we're going along, trying to identify other quote sister medical examiners' offices that are most similar to us, the other astounding thing is that, and it may be hard to believe, that the population that we serve in District 1 is actually more than the population of Washington, D.C.
Wow, interesting.
We have more cases than Washington, D.C. And they have 7 doctors and 97 full-time staff. Their annual budget's $13 million a year. We're working with much, much less than that. And they're name accredited, they're internationally accredited, and that's the amount of staff and money that it takes to have an accredited, well-funded office that can actually service the community. So that's one of the most interesting things about Washington, D.C. is how integrated the medical examiner is in with public health and public emergency response. And that's something I would love to do. Both Dr. Murphy and Dr. Gallagher and I, we love to teach and we want to be involved. We don't have the time to be involved. Our staff is interested in becoming involved and teaching and having community outreach, but we just are spread too thin. We have 19. We have 19 full-time employees. That includes 3 doctors. That's including the doctors, and they
Right.
have 97. So,
Well, I mean, but Washington is so dysfunctional. It's hard to really compare. I mean, I don't know, you're the expert in this field, but I mean, money, no object up there when the rest of the world is starving and they just live in their own bubble. So I'd much
realistically, we need about 50. I'm gonna be honest with you. We need about
50.
50 full-time employees. Yeah.
Now, how are we going to pay for that? Janice, how do we fund? Explain to the viewers how office is funded and 53% of it.
So we do, yeah, so we do fund it with our general fund.
Hmm.
The other thing is, remember that we do collect the cremation fees.
Correct.
And we are still collecting those fees. They do go into our general fund. So, you know, we fund it with ad valorem. Now, as far as a new facility, the communities, the counties could get together and we could bond that facility. We can
Mhm.
use LOST, you know, and of course we all have general fund.
Right.
But one of the things that I think that I mentioned was the cremation fees.
Yes.
We have seen cremation become a more recognized way of, you know, funerals in our community. And so as those, I think, continue to become more accepted, I think that fee will continue to be helpful. We may need to increase the fee at some point. I see Dr. Oleski agreeing with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but so, and I hate to use the term user fees, but quite frankly,
It's work. No, it's work. This to review cremation permit takes time. It is work on our end, and it can sometimes take significant amount of time. It's not,
Right.
you know, we're just saying, okay, 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 okay. You know, it might even eat up my investigator's time to go research, get medical records. I'm sitting there with a stack of medical records on my desk trying to go through it. It is legitimate work, and we're seeing, I don't remember what it is here in District 23, which was a much smaller jurisdiction. It was 2,500 a year. I think it's about 5,000 a year here. The usual, the usual fees, usually $50. Not all of our counties are collecting it. It would be a great way to have a medical examiner's fund, because we do, I know it sounds strange, but we do generate revenue, and that is a source of revenue.
No, I mean, that would be one way to do it. Hey, I have another question from online, and this is a very interesting question. Are you finding through your autopsies that more people have died from COVID-19 that didn't know they had it? Or are you finding more deaths are being attributed to COVID-19 where folks actually died from something else?
Interesting question. We don't have the money to test everybody postpartum. Let's be realistic. Other offices do. They're doing on everybody. We don't have the money or the funds, and I don't know exactly what is the utility of testing on somebody who died, example, in a motor vehicle accident.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm not seeing so much the sudden death from COVID-19 as I think you would kind of expect from the media, and the people who typically die in the hospital. And that wouldn't fall under our jurisdiction because they're a natural and expected death.
Interesting. Well, yeah, I mean, I would think, yeah, of course, I mean, who am I? I'm just a guy that holds an office, but I would think everybody where there's any question at all would at least be, what is it, $15 for a rapid test now these days? I mean, it would, and I know you've got financial intelligence, but how would you even test about just, would you draw, how would you get a sample if you wanted to know if this person had COVID when they died, if they died of old age? How would you test that person?
Same way that you test them in real life.
The nose?
Nasopharyngeal swab. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's, you know, the antibody test, which we don't have those cards. But if we did, we could do that as well.
When I was a kid, I watched a show, and we talked a little bit about this when I was at your facility, called Quincy. It was Jack Klugman was the coroner, and he was like a real, I don't want to say that word. Let's just say he was a real tough guy, you know, and he ran the show, and the police would come to him and he'd say, no, you can't do this. And he would do these things called the coroner's inquest. He would say, no, I want an investigate. Is that a thing? Can you do a coroner's inquest if you think something's went sideways?
All right, so that's a great question. So let me explain the differences. I'm not a coroner. A coroner is a politician. I'm not a politician. I'm appointed.
Okay.
I'm a government. I'm a government appointed individual as a medical examiner. So Florida only has medical examiners, and in the Florida statute, the medical examiners have to be forensic pathologists. As to doing a coroner's inquest, can we investigate a death that's reported to us? There's different avenues to go about it, but usually it's through law enforcement. We don't have any subpoena power at all. So that's a unique thing about Florida, not having subpoena power as a medical examiner system, but that's just the way it is.
Interesting. Well, it was a very entertaining show to watch. Let's just put it that way. Now let's talk. You talked a little bit about the indigent and obviously the cremation fees, and so So let's just, if you're a person, recently everyone talks about homeless folks and there's a lot of them. If a person dies and he's a homeless individual, tell me what happens to his body. What's the process?
Well, if they fall within our jurisdiction within the statute, then they would come to the medical examiner's office. But if they have, known history, then they necessarily would not come to here, but to a rotating funeral home. So it's not so indigent, I believe is the non-politically correct term. They're called unclaimed.
Oh, is it? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I know.
Uh-oh.
Well, we
recently
have
learned
the
this too.
indigent burial program,
Yeah.
so I've not called it the unclaimed yet. So we need to check into that.
Do we need to change that? Is that pejorative? I didn't
Well,
know.
for
I'm not totally sure.
Yeah, for us,
Okay.
indigent burial means we actually help the families, you know that. So ours is
Sure.
so we may be talking apples and oranges.
Okay.
Because we do actually have an indigent burial program for families and those that just may not have the means, that they can apply for a grant, and then we help them, like you said, rotating different funeral homes. So
Yeah.
but
I
I
think
think
our bigger issue is not just the indigent of they don't have the means, but it's also the unclaimed of, even they may have family, they might have money, the family might have money, but they want nothing to do with them. And
that was fascinating.
authority.
That
Yeah.
was fascinating. Will you, and I had a hard time believing it, but tell the viewers. So that is a real issue. They know who the person is. They've got
Mhm.
the means to take the body, and then what happens in some cases that you've seen?
They just refuse to assume rights over the body, and they do not make any arrangements for their loved one, and they don't have to. And at that point, they're still stuck in our facility in the cooler while we're working feverishly with the counties to get them properly to their final destination. But no, they don't have to. By law, they don't have to, and then the counties have to eat that cost.
Wow. And you told me that was a big challenge in terms of your space. I've been in your cooler and seen the situation. When I was there, you had 35 bodies in there. My understanding from talking to Renee Benanati yesterday, that you were full. You had 40
Mhm.
bodies in there. So a lot of that issue is these unclaimed bodies where perhaps a family member just doesn't want to deal with it. Let the county deal with it. We end up paying for it. Your office ends up dealing with it. Is that something that we could legislatively mandate? I wonder. Any thoughts on that? I wonder, how do other states handle this? Is there a model legislation? Because I bring that up to Michelle Salzman and Alex, because you shouldn't be allowed to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to just abandon a body and you told me 45, 60 days sometimes it's sitting in our cooler. Is that right?
Yeah, as we're working with the counties to get them to their final disposition, they will occupy and that we're not a funeral home.
Right.
We are a part of a hospital morgue. We need that space. So other offices actually charge if they are there for longer than 4 or 5 days or even a week. Miami, for example, does. In terms of a mandate, I'm not sure. I'm part of a listserv, and I can look into it because I know that this has come up quite a bit and how other states handle it, but I'm not 100% familiar.
Interesting. And I just got a question. How are you going to force someone else to be responsible for someone else? Well, that's very easy if they're the next of kin. I mean, I think it's pretty basic. I mean, I don't know exactly what the mechanics could look like, but I know this: the taxpayers shouldn't have to fund it, particularly if it's someone that has the financial wherewithal. And but from just stepping back, it's just not the right thing to do. You don't leave I found it hard to believe, but I mean, obviously I believe, but I found it hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Speaking of things hard to believe, it's hard to believe how quick an hour goes by. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate this conversation. I know people are watching it. I know people are interested just as I am. But the final thing I wanted to talk about with you was when we were on the tour, you told me that you felt like, because I asked, how's the COVID-19 really impacting the number? And I know there's a tremendous 70% increase in the number of bodies, but you said it wasn't just COVID.
right.
About the other things that you've seen this year with COVID and how it's contributed to the higher deaths.
So yesterday I went through and compared 2019 to 2020 just for Escambia County. Like you said, district-wide, we have 70% more total cases. So let's subtract COVID. All right. So what's the actual increase minus COVID? And it's 30%. It's not any better. Most offices across the country were seeing like a 15 to 20% but we saw a 30% increase. And I went back through and tried to figure out what's the difference here. And the difference is actually a surge of drug overdoses, a 60% increase in drug overdoses. That is where the majority of the case increase is coming from. It's not suicides, it's not homicides, it's not natural deaths, it is drug overdoses. And it is incredibly sad. I truly believe that this is COVID related. I feel that these people, they can't get physically in person to the resources that they need to. Maybe they can't get to their Suboxone clinic, or they can't go to their NA meetings, but the physical support is no longer there for these people. And it's incredibly sad.
And you'd also mentioned a phenomenon where younger people who perhaps delayed going to care, they had a heart flutter or something, they should have went and seen the cardiologist or the doctor, but they didn't. And then you said you had more than a few younger people that ended up on your table. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, and that's also the incredibly sad thing about it. I'm having some 30 to 40-year-olds that have crushing chest pain with radiating down their arm for days, and they don't want to go to the doctor, or they can't go to the doctor. They think that they have no, so there's a couple of factors. One, they might have no job and can't get health insurance, and they don't want to go and pay for that because they feel despondent about not having health insurance. And the second thing is people are scared to go to the emergency room now. And so we're seeing a lot of these kinds of related deaths in terms of the younger people that don't want to go to the emergency room. My friends who are emergency room physicians are seeing a decrease in non-COVID cases. You know, my friend's not treating the heart attacks, and then I end up seeing them. So
wow.
if you have crushing chest pain, please go to the ER.
Go see a doctor. Gosh,
Yes.
Oh my Lord. Well, I got time for one more question. And again, my thanks to all of you, Janice, Eric, and Dr. Oleski. FEMA announcing the payments of up to $7,000 for COVID. This is coming off the internet for COVID. Mm-hmm. Can that help us, Janice? I mean, I know FEMA, it takes a while to get the money back. Would that help us with her storage issues?
So what's interesting is I am trying to find out exactly the process. And as you said, we can take a lot of, it takes a long time for us to get reimbursement. And quite frankly, I have an entire staff that's working on reimbursement. I can't.
Going way back, right?
Families, yeah. So I'm not quite sure how a family is going to make a direct request to FEMA. And I don't know, Eric, if you've gotten any new details. As of yesterday afternoon, we didn't have any specific details, but I asked my staff to find out because what would be really tough is if it comes to the counties and then we have to provide that, disbursement to the folks. But I would expect that Dr. Oleski or anyone else that's had to do the cause of death will be part of that process. Because that is the way you're going to, with FEMA, you have to document to be able to get reimbursement. So, we started looking at that yesterday, and it's a little concerning because, as you know, with CARES and other things, some of these things are fraught with fraud. And
yep.
It just adds another layer of, unfortunately, review. So I'm hoping that FEMA can come up with a way to maybe just have the death certificate and directly reimburse the family. That would be the easiest way. But quite frankly, we don't always see the easiest way.
So that would be something we would pursue with Congressman Gates, right? We would work through Senator Rubio, Senator Scott, and Congressman Gates to help with that, I would assume. Is that correct?
Well, that would be my hope. I would say that based on this administration and the way they've been operating the first couple of weeks, they're just kind of taking the bull by the horns and sending out directions directly from their agencies and the White House. Kind of what Eric mentioned earlier about how we find out information related to vaccines. I think that's similar to what we're seeing in DC as well. Just like the $15 an hour, minimum wage increase by 2025, coming directly out of Congress or something like that. They've got a majority of the offices in DC, and so they're
flexing.
They're
flexing their power. And frankly, why wouldn't they? Well, guys, unfortunately, an hour has passed by. I just can't believe how quick it goes, but I want to, again, reiterate my thanks, Dr. Oleski, for being here this morning. Obviously, Janet and Eric, I appreciate you guys being here every month. I just think there's value to this. I always get lots of follow-on activity after these things and questions and things like this. So appreciate your all's time. I hope you all have a great rest of the week. And Dr. Alessi, we're going to work on your issue. I mean, we know about it now. It's in the media. It was on last night and everyone's talking about it. So to the best of our abilities, we're going to try and help you get the space that you need. So thanks again for being
I
here.
appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Y'all have a great morning.
Thank you.
All right, bye.